Good morning, good morning, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us today for this crucial discussion on voice over long-term evolution and voice over Wi-Fi technologies. As 3G networks phase out, VoLTE stands as a lifeline for voice services during the transition to 4G and 5G networks. It is projected that by 2025, over 80% of phone calls will be VoLTE-based. With this rapid evolution of 4G and 5G technologies, implementing seamless VoLTE and voice over wireless solution has become a priority for telecom providers globally. These technologies not only provide better voice quality, but also pave the way for innovative services and applications in the future. My name is Teresa Wankin, and I'm the Secretary General of Canto. And today, I have the pleasure of hosting a distinguished guest, Mr. Javier Martin Lopez, the CEO of Suma Networks, a leading authority in this field. I'm also pleased to announce that Suma Networks is a valued member of Canto, and we are excited to be working with them to introduce this cutting-edge technology in the region. But before I introduce Javi and tell you a little bit about him, I must thank you for joining us this morning. I just want to remind you that we will have a question and answer session at the end of Mr. Martin's presentation. So feel free to post your questions in the chat box throughout the session. You don't have to wait until the end. So who is Mr. Martin? Javier is a servant leader known for his agile approach to leadership, emphasizing collaboration and adaptability in business. He excels in guiding business strategies, balancing professional life with a strong focus on family. Outside of work, he maintains a healthy lifestyle, leads through example by running and golfing, and also indulging in the fine art of wine drinking. Javier is also a husband and a father of 3. Mr. Martin, thank you for joining us this morning and sharing with your expertise.
Thank you so much, Teresa, and all the Canto organization. It's a real pleasure being here, and we are really excited to be working in this geography where we already have some references, but we are pretty convinced that we can bring some nice solutions to all the evolutions in the network that need to be done in this area.
So Javier, you may share your slide and start. Audience, as I said before, please, you don't have to wait till the end to post your questions. If, as Javier is presenting, you have a question, you can put it in the chat and we'll get to it at the end of the presentation. So, Javier.
Thank you again. Let's go for the session. So first, a little bit of an introduction of who we are and what we do and where we placed, and then let's go rapidly into the VoLTE part, which is the center of this conversation. I was going to introduce myself, but Teresa did such a terrific job that I'm just going to run over this slide. Yeah, probably the biggest highlight is my love for fine wine and drinking wine in a very elegant way and a conscious way. But that's something that I really enjoy. Let me very quickly present you the company. So Suma Networks is a joint venture between us, and when I say us, is the Spanish part. We are based in Madrid, in Spain. That's where we all started, and then we got together with a customer that had a need. They were full MVNO. They were using a Tekelec equipment at the time, and Tekelec was acquired by Oracle, so they were left with no options. So we joined forces together to do this development of this company called Suma Networks. So we are, again, the Spanish part, we basically run the show, and the Dutch part just helps us, as it's a big organization with legal, with financial. So we have a strong backup from this group, but as well, we run our lives independently in the pursuit of our goals. As of today, we have, well, I should update the slide because now it's 35 customers all over the world. We are managing around between 40 and 90 daily subscribers in our systems. We are founding member of an association here in Europe, but as well we're a proud member of associations like Rural Wireless, like CCA in the United States, like PITA in the Pacific, and now recently Canto. So we are, you can see that one of our aims as a company is working with smaller companies, smaller regions where the big guys don't get or are not interested. So that's one of our main focuses. Not to we believe in the industry. We believe in an industry of plenty of carriers with a lot of options for customers, and that's one of our parts in the philosophy of the company. Basically, what we do, and I'm going to try not to go too technical, okay, just to give you a quick overview. But we work on the mobile core of the network. We started the company with what you see on the left-hand side, which is an HLR HSS, one of the core of the core, or one of the main pieces into the networks. With time, we surrounded it with an EIR, with a AAA, with a PCRF, with DNS-INA, with some other pieces, composing what is effectively a small core adapted to many needs. And recently, in the last few years, we have evolved all the products into 5G standalone, which is something that will come eventually. Will come quicker and in some geographies, slower in other geographies, but at some point, 5G standalone will be there. But it will take time, and it's not going to be like this one might dream of a single 5G standalone network all over the world operating nicely and so on. That's going to be very complicated. If it ever happens, what we are going to leave, as Teresa was pointing out, is the key word for the years to come is interworking. Okay, so we are still going to have our networks in 2G and 3G. Maybe you switch off 3G, but you keep 2G, or the other way around, because many devices, many subscribers still depend on those technologies. At the same time, we will start deploying our 5G standalone for better services and for better efficiency in the spectrum and efficiency on the networks and even on the energy consumption. But again, the keyword will be the interworking. So at Suma Networks, we have already developed everything in 5G standalone. So we have our UDI, UDM, USF, UDSF. We have a PCF, which is the evolution of the PCRF, the NSSAAF as an evolution of the AAA. We are working on an F. We have the 5G EIR and some other functions we're working on. But basically what we bring to you is this product where we can take care of the current networks. We can take care of your evolution into 5G standalone at your own pace with control, total cost of ownership and resources. And this is what we call the converged control plane, because we have a single control plane with a single database, unified provisioning that can work seamlessly in all the interfaces. Below, what you see in blue is the pieces that connect to the user plane and to the radio. And that's something where, as of today, we work with partners, but we work as well in our own product. So we are creating our own SMF and AMF. We have our own IMS core that you're going to see a bit later, and we're working on a P gateway. The idea is that if we're able to achieve this vision, and again, as of today, we already have achieved it with partners, we're achieving it with our own software overall, then we are able to bring a mobile core that can be used for many purposes. Can be used for private networks, can be used for regular networks, can be used for IoT, can be used for any kind of projects you might think of. Just plug it into the radio, plug it into commercial radios or open source radios like Free 5G, Open 5G, then plug it into observability tools, OSS, BSS, and then that's what we are trying to bring to the customers and carriers all over the world. And our vision is to become one of the favorite independent providers in what something we really like, which is the multi-vendor core. So the promise of 5G is carriers, you can bring your own infrastructure, then on top of it, then you can choose which network functions you want to use, which vendors you want to work with. You're not anymore obliged to just have a box from a certain vendor where everything is under their control. So there's a lot of degrees of freedom to be gained from the 5G multi-vendor strategy. But of course, many carriers say, I love the multi-vendor idea, sounds great, but then this brings me a lot of friction and a lot of work on interworking and making things work together. 5G will solve that somehow, But as of today, we're able as well to offer a box from Suma Networks, like a code that you can use for many purposes. And one of the examples is VoLTE in a box that we're going to see in a minute. Just to give you a vision of the customers we're working on, basically we have customers all over the world. So we have, for example, Vodafone French Polynesia in one corner of the world. Then we have GS in Malaysia in the other corner of the world. On your area, probably the most important reference for you would be Telem, which we are very proud to be working on. They're using our HSS already, and we hope to, start using other network functions, and as well we can extend to other customers in the area. I think it's an area where we can really serve customers rapidly. Which use cases are we covering with our solutions? We are covering the evolution into 5G NSA, 5G SA, as you might imagine. We are working in a lot of projects, especially in the United States, doing rip and replace of legacy or high-risk vendors. So we are specialists in migrating, from old systems to new systems like us, from the Huawei's, the Ericssons, you name it. We still work with a lot of MVNOs becoming full MVNOs. We work with international carriers. We have a lot of experience on multi-SIM, multi-SIM, roaming, steering of roaming. Many IoT players in the industry work with Suma Networks because they find that we still give them the carrier-grade quality they need at the price they can pay for an IoT business. We have projects as well in the private LTE networks area, and we do some other things like secure communications, VoLTE VoWiFi evolutions, and 3G roaming offloading in some geographies. So, having said that, having done the introduction, let's go to the VoLTE. Why VoLTE? And when I say VoLTE, is interchangeably is VoLTE Voice over Wi-Fi. What we've seen in the last few months, I would say, is that first we started with VoLTE, but now most of carriers are thinking about Voice over Wi-Fi together with VoLTE, or as a first option, because VoLTE Voice over Wi-Fi can offer other kind of use cases that are very interesting that we're going to see a little further the presentation. So, in fact, all the idea about IMS networks and VoLTE started many years ago. I still remember one of my first Mobile World Congresses. It was like what is new in the industry as well. There's IMS, there's VoLTE. This is going to come. This is, with all these advantages. Well, the truth is that it's been very complicated for carriers to start the VoLTE projects first because there was no real need. In the end, what is VoLTE is voice. Yes, it's voice over LTE, not over a circuit switch. But from the point of view of customers, there's no real advantage, or there's no perceived advantage. What is worse is that there's no real revenue streams identified from it. It's like, I'm going to give customers voice. That's something they already have. Nobody's going to pay extra just for getting voice, even if it's better. Probably the main issue is that the current networks still work and still work pretty well. And we all have issues with calls that drop and so on and so forth. But overall, we have a fine experience using our voice channels as of today. This all equipment that we're going to be phasing out in the next few years is already has given the return on investment that it was needed. So it's something like everything is against VoLTE, if you want to put it that way. It's like all my investments are done. Customers are more or less happy. And if I have to go VoLTE, there's a lot of complexity around it. So why go in there? No? But in the end, it's something that we all know is going to happen because with more or less time, networks are going to become IP, and we are going to be phasing out the circuit switch equipment. And now it's arriving in full force, especially since the carriers in the United States decided to switch off the 3G networks. Then they are being followed by many carriers all over the world. Europe now is in full force in that movement. So that brings a lot of complexities, additional complexities. There's smartphones. Now it's not so easy to find people with classical devices or legacy devices anymore. Even now there's sub $50 smartphones. So people are getting used to new experiences and that. And then one of the main factors is going to be the advent of 5G. So for 5G, we need spectrum. And for that spectrum, we need to repurpose the existing spectrum or empty it. So one of the main reasons for the becoming of 5G is to empty that spectrum we're using for all the technologies and leave it free for 5G in everything that is coming. 5G has a big promise, which is I'm going to have just a single network. So let's get rid of 2G, 3G, IMS, 4G, all this equipment. Let's just put a fully new network, easier to manage, easy to understand, easy to operate. Yes, and that will happen, but it brings as well its complexities. No, there's new technologies like Kubernetes, cloud native that are not so easy right now for many carriers in the world. And then there's another point of friction, which is the new devices. So it's the old devices, most of the devices we already have in our pockets, they are not ready for 5G. So we are going to have to switch our devices for new devices. So that's another step, it's to go 5G, and that will take time to do all this replacement of devices. But anyway, what is happening now is that 2G, 3G networks are being switched off in many parts of the world. So VoLTE Wi-Fi, it becomes a must, especially in some geographies. And then will stay for longer, because it's not only for now to solve just an issue of calls over IP, it's as well because as so far, the voice calls in 5G are done over IMS. And there's a new standard called Voice New Radio that will use the 5G radio, but they will still rely on IMS. So yes, we need to go VoLTE in order to go to Voice New Radio as well. We have to do the same project effort in that direction. But again, the advent of a new technology solves a lot of issues, but as well brings new issues. And we have on the right-hand side the typical Maslow pyramid. Now, how has it evolved with the advent of the new technologies? So far, we can switch off either 2G or 3G, but we have to keep and maintain one of them at least, because there's many IoT devices that rely on 2G. There's many people that cannot be reached via VoLTE because they still don't have the IMS and the coverage for VoLTE communications or IP communications. So we still need to rely on that. We cannot leave customers. All regulators in the world push all carriers to be serving communities, be serving people. So there's no way to switch off 3G until you have VoLTE roaming, or sorry, VoLTE calls cover. Okay, and then one of the other big issues is roaming. And probably you guys have experienced this when you fly into the US since last year, when all the carriers decided to switch off the 3G. Well, there was still some 3G projects for roaming that were running. In fact, we were running one of them. But as of today, it's like all the 3G networks are being switched off and there's no roaming. So you arrive to the United States and there's no VoLTE. If you don't have a VoLTE agreement with your country, with your carrier, there's no roaming. You just simply, you cannot make calls. And sometimes you receive this message saying, sorry, this is the US, there's no 3G roaming, you cannot do calls. And even we understood that some carriers are telling their customers when they call the hotlines and the customer care, and say, what can I do? Is like, well, connect to a Wi-Fi and speak via WhatsApp. So it's like we're sending our customers to the very, very current OTT players. So it's like we are sleeping with the enemy. So that doesn't really make sense, because we're probably losing a lot of revenues via roaming. Same for USA travelers going to other places in the world. There's no roaming anymore. So what do they do? If they don't have the 3G fallback? So again, the interworking keeps being the keyword for the times to come. When I go to the States, I find myself Wi-Fi crawling. I'm looking for public Wi-Fi's in the airports or in the hotels, and then in the meantime, there's no roaming because it's very expensive using data. Okay, so the idea is that, okay, understood, I need to go VoLTE, and I probably need to go VoLTE really quick because things are happening really fast, and the more 3G networks that are being switched off all over the world, the faster I need to go VoLTE. But how do I do that? Okay, because there's a lot of complexity. So I have to prepare my network for IMS, which is not a simple technology. I have to still contemplate the fallback and interworking scenario. So I need to design a transition period in when all the networks are going to be coexisting and co-living, and then I will phase out the old ones. But I need a long time to prepare for this. I need resources, I need time. So it's going to be an expensive transition. And then I'm going to replace all my basic systems, so voice systems, with VoLTE, with a new technology. And that means that I need new devices, which means I need to do a lot of testing. And testing the devices in VoLTE is really, really complicated, because now, before it was only carriers and vendors, but now it's carrier, vendors, and device manufacturers. No? And you know that there's a lot of power in companies like Samsung or iPhone, I mean Apple with iPhone, that have a lot of power, and they can determine, and they have a strong testing processes to accept which carriers can or cannot use their devices. No? So there's a balance of power there that needs to be contemplated as well. What elements do we need to create a VoLTE voice over Wi-Fi system? We need an IMS core. We need an IMS-enabled HSS. We need a AAA for diameter, and an EPDG if we want to do voice over Wi-Fi, and we need a PCRF to keep the quota. And then we need to connect this system to our OSS BSS. And we need to connect to our MMESP gateways for the traffic. So not a simple project. And of course, there's many vendors out there that can do it for you. You know? There's a lot of IMS providers. There's a lot of mobile core vendors. There are people with experience in the field. Somehow, and let me tell you that VoLTE is something that is still pretty new, except for big MNO, sorry, in some geographies. It's a lot of experimenting around IMS, and we've worked with a lot of IMS core vendors, and there are still issues that need to be solved. There are still bugs in the applications. Sorry, I need to be absolutely clear to you here today. So we're still experiencing and we're still learning what IMS means and what it brings and what are the pros and cons. But in any case, you have to start thinking about it. You have to start facing the music and dance, as you would say. And then the main issue is, again, how do I do it? How do I integrate it into my network? How do I test the full solution? Okay. So again, many other vendors out there. What Suba Networks can bring for you is the experience that we have done VoLTE projects in several customers in all geographies. We have interworked and tested most of IMS cores in the market, so we know where the issues are and we know where the problems can be. Again, we always have this mentality of working with the MVNOs, smaller MNOs, but always with the regional mindset in mind, always thinking about back-to-back in the business models, and always wanting to help you. We're already working with some US partners in this area and in this kind of projects that we are establishing in the US in some other geographies. So what is the solution we're bringing? We call it VoLTE in a box. Nothing too fancy, but well, sounds like a box, so sounds good. So we basically, what we want to do is to bring a solution that you can install in your network in a very short time, being very cost effective. Let me say that this solution was selected as a finalist in the Global Awards, which are the awards in the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona every year. So we were finalists for our category. We didn't win, but being finalists for a company like us was really satisfying, and we really believe that that was a strong support to our idea of VoLTE in a box. Basically, how does it work? It's a box where we have our HSS, our PCRF, our AAA, our IMS core, but we have as well partners with other IMS cores, so we can adapt depending on what you need. There's several IMS cores with different features, so we can build around that your needs and bring the best IMS core solution. But in principle, it's like we have this solid solution in just a single box, and then we use the EPDG from a partner, and we have an EPDG from open source to complement that. Okay, so all the elements in the box are pre-integrated, pre-tested, so you're gonna save a long time in deploying your VoLTE in your network. We just connect to your OSS BSS, we connect to your network topology, whatever it might be, and then we ensure that your time to market is highly reduced by using our solution. And then we can always, I'll go to the business models later, but you can ensure that we can go to a business model that suits your business needs. As a deployment strategies, the good news is that we don't need any special technology or any special underground infrastructure. So it's not compulsory to go cloud native to use our solution. You can do it, but it's not compulsory. We can deploy on any out-of-the-shelf hardware. We can deploy in any hypervisor for virtual machines, so we can virtualize our solution. We can work in public clouds like AWS or Azure. We can work in private clouds as well. We can deploy everything in Kubernetes if needed. If that's the way you want to go, we can do it. So the comfort that we're giving you with this solution is that you don't need a specific infrastructure or a specific architecture in your network. We can deploy it in any. We can start from a few subscribers, few thousands of subscribers, up to the millions, because all the software scales up and down correctly using the infrastructure below, and then very easy to replicate, all with redundancy and with upgrades that are part of the offering. Oops. Okay, just to give you a very brief example of what a deployment model would look like. I mean, nothing different to what many other players do, is that we have our front ends, our backends, everything is geo-redundant. We have synchronization between the database data, so we make sure that you don't lose service anytime. That's one of the key features of our solution, is that if one of your geo sites fails, then the other one takes over. If a front end fails in one of the nodes, the other one can take over. So everything is redundant, so we don't lose service at any time. And the good news is that the license you're going to pay is not affected by the way you deploy. So we don't charge per virtual machines, nodes, sites, servers. We just charge per active subscribers. So that becomes very easy to predict on the cost part and very easy to predict for you on your financials. Let me rush through the technical, just in order not to take a long time out of you, but everything you would expect on a IMS core-based solution, so IP, SMS gateway, MMTEL, so we can have supplementary services in both sides, in 4G and 3G, and they work the same that is going to be applied for 5G. We have MRF for announcements. We have single radio voice call control, legal interception if that's needed in your geography, and then the PCRF and the EPDG as part of the solution. Then we integrate with your MMESP gateway, because we have a broad experience in this. We have a broad experience as well in connecting to your OCS, and as well on the OSS BSS front. We have an API, and we have integrated with at least 20 vendors in that area. So we are ready to do integration with any of your existing players. Going now to the business model, as I was announcing, we base everything on active subscribers. We don't charge per provision subscribers in the database. We don't charge per machine, servers, and so on. It's just active subscribers. What is an active subscriber? Is a subscriber that has attached to the network in the last month. That's the period we used for the measurement. So all of them that have connected are active. If they are not connected, they are not active. And that's what we charge for. Below this umbrella, then we have a CapEx model, which is the classical one. You pay perpetual license, then we have annual maintenance. You can pay OpEx, which means you pay a monthly fee for all the service. You can go pay as you go, which is, so OpEx model is still a capacity model, but paid monthly. Pay as you go is a model where prices can go up and down depending on your number of active subscribers in each period, but of course has a different unit price. We offer this service as well as a managed service. So it means we take care of all the box installation, the systems, we take care of the software, we take care of everything that is working. Then of course we offer the 24/7 support, and we have local support available in the region. Let me just very briefly go over some of the use cases, and maybe this opens your ideas and why do I need it? How could I use it? First, we are doing a lot of VoLTE in a box as an excuse to do a replacement of legacy systems. No? Or I have an old HLR, I have an old PCRF, I need to change it. Definitely I need to change it for VoLTE, but at the same time, okay, we can do VoLTE, but as well we can help you with your legacy system. So maybe we can do the migration to our system and then simplify your network in that regard. We can set it up as a parallel system. Some customers of us say, look, I already have my HSS, my PCRF, I don't want to touch that. I have a network that is running fine, so I don't want complications, but I need to go VoLTE. And it's okay, we can do a dual subscription by which some of your subscribers where you want to offer VoLTE 2, they are in our system, they are in our HSS, and then we can orchestrate the traffic. So for several services, they can still go to the classical network. For other services, they can come to our system. So we can run in parallel the VoLTE in a box together with your current network without the need, for a migration. Maybe you can think of a stage migration later, whenever you're ready. Many MVNOs are doing these kind of projects with us, going VoLTE, and especially thinking about VoLTE roaming. One important note is we are not a communications hub. We are not like a Signiverse or a Comphone. Okay. In fact, they are our partners. We just bring the solution, just operate the solution, but we cannot operate the roaming correspondences. That's something for other companies that do it extremely well in the market. And then the last example is one of my favorite one probably is giving connectivity to isolated communities. So we have several projects now where we are connecting people that are in remote islands where they don't have connectivity, or the connectivity is very poor or is very expensive because for some reason there's only one provider. Or we have as well people like living in deserts, for example, where there's no mobile coverage, and the only one is maybe via satellite, but it's expensive and it's slow and it doesn't really work, or there's nothing at all. But these communities have they have Wi-Fi installed. So we go there and we put a VoLTE in a box project at the end of the network and on their Wi-Fi, and then we connect the Wi-Fi network to the mobile network, and then suddenly these guys can start calling each other via Wi-Fi. They can start calling Wi-Fi to mobile and mobile to Wi-Fi. So we effectively are giving them the mobile communication they don't have. And this is, a beautiful project, not only from the technical point of view, but as well from the social point of view. And that's something we really look for. So basically, this was all from me. Hope it was interesting for you and that it wasn't too long. And I'm open now to your questions if you might have some. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Javier. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. So we have some questions. I want to start with one on why has the need for VoLTE and voice over Wi-Fi become more urgent, especially in recent times with the sunset of 3G networks? Could you just go over that a little bit? I know you spoke a little bit about what's happening in the US and Europe. Are there any timelines that the Caribbean should be conscious of?
Yes. Well, as the networks have been evolving over the years, when we first started creating the IP-driven network, so everything that was IMS and everything became data and so on, there was like a separation between certain use cases. So everything that was data was on IMS or IP elements and diameter and all these protocols. But then the voice kept working on 3G, on circuit switch. In fact, I don't know if you have experienced this, but sometimes you are talking to someone on WhatsApp, having a conversation, and suddenly there's an incoming call from another number, and then your conversation stops. And then you only go back to your WhatsApp conversation when this call is finished or is unattended. And this is because your phone detects that the call is coming, then it switches the network into 3G to attend the call, and then goes back to 4G. Okay, so there's been a disconnection that now VoLTE is the bridge to unify this experience, because now calls should not happen in 3G anymore in circuit switch. They will just happen on the same in the same technology. So it means that effectively calls are going to be done via IP and via data packets. So calls are going to be data, and then they're not going to be calls anymore. No, once we switch off these radios. So whenever there's a network where you want to switch off 3G because of, as we said before, spectrum needs, because of your economics, because of your evolution, then you need to substitute it by VoLTE, because it's the technology that can do the voice calls over 4G and over IP networks. So that's the real urgency. I mean, if you plan to have your 3G network forever, then probably you will never need VoLTE. But then you're going to have a lot of people coming from other countries to your geography that are going to be roaming, and they will only have VoLTE enabled handsets. So at some point, even if you in your geography don't need, or you want to plan to keep your 3G forever, that's the case, you still need the 4G and the VoLTE to be able to roam with other countries. No? And that's going to be something that is going to happen increasingly with many geographies, no? As we switch off. So yeah, the need is there. And it's a nice thing. I mean, it's like when we are all IP networks, then network operation is going to be much simpler and probably more efficient from the economic point of view. So this is the way to go, definitely. But of course, it has to be at the pace that everybody requires. This.
Okay, thank you. Okay, from a network provider side, from the telecom provider side, what are some of the challenges that they are seeing when you're implementing VoLTE for them?
So there is one that we cannot help solve it, unfortunately, which is the devices one I was mentioning before. So that's pretty complicated. So what we found is that Apple and Samsung, for example, they have really strong testing requirements, and they do like a formal testing. And if your network doesn't really support all the use case, then what they think, the logic behind is they think you're gonna give my iPhone users or my Samsung users a worse experience that I don't want. So they are only going to allow you to go VoLTE on VoLTE Wi-Fi if you ensure that the experience in your network is correct. No, they're going to protect their customers. So that's the change of balance in power that I was talking about before, is that most of the power has now gone to the device manufacturers. And so that's something that is complicated for carriers. It's a long process. All carriers want to do it, so there's a like a waiting list, and then the tests are really heavy, and then you have to get ready for that well before, because you only do the test once, and if it fails, then it's really complicated. So you really need to make those and then what happens is that you have subscribers in your network using iPhone and Samsung, and they want to use these new features and they cannot do it. So you are in a difficult position. You really need to go voice over Wi-Fi and VoLTE for these guys, or they will switch off and they will go to some other competitor. And at the same time, you have to do this investment. No? So time is ticking. There's pressure for consumers. There's pressure from devices. Testing the devices is one complication. And the other one is the one we're trying to solve, is that, it's a big technical project, it's long, it's expensive, it's complicated. So that's what we try to bring, this solution where everything is under the same box, where we save a lot of time in integration time, in testing, and then we just can go directly to testing the devices. That saves a long time. And then we adapt our business model to every carrier. We go in a back-to-back business model mode. Okay, so we can really accommodate to what is needed and think about flexible SaaS models. No? So there's no, we try to alleviate the big initial investments that should be done with other solutions.
Thank you. So we have a question from SG. Thank you, SG. So USA operators are leading the sunset of 2G and 3G networks. That means that USA subscribers are being migrated en masse to VoLTE. How does this impact roamers in the US and Caribbean roamers, roamers or USA tourists in the Caribbean market? So we know that we have that problem. You spoke about it a little bit. So when we have that problem with roaming when we go to the US, but he is asking, how does it affect US tourists in Caribbean markets? Did I get that right? Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a main point that is now really hot, because yes, Caribbean roamers going into the US, then they face the same issues as I do coming from Europe, and there's no 3G anymore. So there's, I mean, if you just switch on your phone and you get plugged into, I don't know, AT&T, Verizon, and if you try to do a phone call with your 3G phone, just simply doesn't work. So if you don't have a VoLTE enabled phone, you cannot do phone calls. Okay, and there's no SMS, by the way. You don't get SMSs either. No? So only if you have a VoLTE enabled phone and you have a VoLTE plan in your home network, and then you have a correspondence with the carriers in the US, then you're going to have like a seamless experience because you're going to be roaming into 4G, and then everything's going to be fine. But for most of consumers, and I'm saying, it's not a question of geographies, is that except for some advanced carriers in some places, most of consumers don't have roaming into the US now. And then, as I said, my personal experience is Wi-Fi crawling and trying to be in WhatsApp all the time, which means, and that's the big issue, is that there's a loss of revenues because one of the main sources of revenues for carriers is roaming. And then now until 4G roaming is not arranged, then there's no roaming, there's no calls, and then there's no money. So that's quite a big issue and it's impacting. And there's some companies, and we are after one of these projects, trying to still do some roaming. So up to about 6 months ago, I think it was, there was still a way to do roaming because all the roaming in the US was directed to T-Mobile and Sprint, and we were part of that project. So even if you have other carrier, they will send it so you could still do some roaming, but now it's completely switch off. But there are other companies after this opportunity. If I can set up a company or something in the US where I can do still 3G and I can get all the roaming traffic from people coming from all over the world, I think that's a magnificent business opportunity. And I still don't know why people are not going after it. There must be something I am missing. And the other way around is, when you're in a Caribbean country and then the subscribers come to you, I think it is somehow solved because even if they are 4G only VoLTE in their geographies, their phones are still on 3G. Okay, and then you can still do the correspondence and then plug into 4G network and then go to the home HSS, get the data, so you can still make it. And then they do the conversion from that 3G in the Caribbean island to the VoLTE in the US and so on. So that's somehow solved technically, but at some point it might disappear. So at some point, maybe we have VoLTE only US subscribers coming to the islands, and then it's either data or and maybe they can roam, and maybe they can do local calls using VoLTE and voice over Wi-Fi in private networks, but they probably cannot phone home anymore, if there's no correspondence. So somehow it is solved, but then what if they roam only in 4G? If you don't have the roaming established correctly, then maybe they just roaming data and then they're not paying you for the roaming. So, and I'm not a specialist in that last part, in that last mile. But what I see is that there's a danger that we all lose revenues in this movement.
Yeah, so it's more than the inconvenience, but about the loss of revenue as well. So we have another question from Paulus. And thank you, Paulus. He's saying, thank you for the insightful presentation. What do you advise as migration strategy to migrate customers from 2G straight onto 4G without losing those 2G only customers?
Yeah. And in fact, that's something that is happening, for example, in Africa. In Africa, there's a absolute leap in technologies. Is they started with 2G. Most countries don't have 3G, or if they do, it's scattered, because it's big countries with complicated layouts and so on. But now they're in a big movement. There's a lot of projects, especially in Nigeria, where there's 40 new licenses for MVNOs, and they're pushing a lot for projects that are 2G, 4G. So they're not going to do 3G anymore, which means they don't have, to decommission equipment or refarm a spectrum and so on. But they have very clear that we will always keep 2G, and then we will leap into 4G and then 5G NSA, and then let's think about it. But for African countries, for example, there's looking for technologies that can maintain 2G for a long time, evolve into 4G, and then the issue you have is that evolving all your devices on 2G, which is the majority of your install base, into 4G will take a long time, because it's not, even if you have sub $50 smartphones, many people are still on very old legacy devices. Okay, so it's not going to be so easy. And even if you can switch all your subscribers, you still have to evolve your network. And again, complex geography, very dispersed populations. So getting to everybody with 4G is still a very big issue. So in my view, in the example of Africa, and I think this applies to many other geographies, and yesterday we were having a conversation with some big carriers in Latin America, It's like the feeling that at least 2G is going to be there for a long time. So I would plan for a, let's say, a logical, peaceful migration. Is if there's no real need, or you cannot make more revenues from these 2G customers going into 4G, then let them live there happily, and that's fine. So take your time. If you don't need to rush. The only thing you need to rush for is to cover what we were discussing before, all your roaming agreements, to make sure that you don't lose roaming revenues when going VoLTE. But on the other hand, is do a slow migration from 2G to 4G. Maybe 3G can be the commission, but you need to maintain 2G. Then you have to put 4G. Make sure your systems work in both technologies. Then get ready for 5G standalone, but that will come with time. So I would say, 2G is still reasonable consumption, reasonable expenses, reasonable revenues. Take your time. No, don't rush. That would be my advice.
Thank you. And a question from Jimmy. Do you see voice over Wi-Fi being a true demand for operators when they launch VoLTE? Or is it just a nice to have feature to offer compatible users? Do you think the quality also of VoLTE service experience is affected without voice over Wi-Fi?
So the curious thing, and it's a great question as well, thank you for that, is that everything started with VoLTE, and saying, so Wi-Fi was like out of question. There's no Wi-Fi. We're carriers. we do just LTE. And then what we have discovered along the way is that, especially in the last few months, there's a strong demand for I'm going VoLTE, but I need to go voice over Wi-Fi as well. Because I have many people, like in Europe, for example, many people have Wi-Fi at home, and we have fiber with a lot of speed and throughput. So if I am able to do voice calls over my Wi-Fi network, then that's very efficient in terms of consumption of resources. I free the antenna, so it's a kind of a Wi-Fi offload for carriers. So for carriers, Wi-Fi calling is being revealed at even being superior to VoLTE, in the sense that it gives me other use cases. So people can plug into the Wi-Fi network at home or wherever they are, and then they can do voice calls via Wi-Fi, which saves me some traffic in the edge of the network and some antennas, and then brings me other cases, like I can plug communities in Wi-Fi that I don't need to deploy a whole mobile infrastructure, but I can deploy just Wi-Fi. So it's a great complement. So what I would say is that before it was only VoLTE, now it's both. Now that I'm in VoLTE, and the only piece you need to add is a AAA and EPDG, but then your VoLTE, your VoLTE Wi-Fi as well. So with the same system, with a very small incremental investment, you're in VoLTE Wi-Fi as well, and that gives the image to the outside world that you are a very innovative carrier as well. And then it brings you cases where, in my view, I think there's better chances to create new revenue streams from voice over Wi-Fi than on VoLTE, because VoLTE is really limited to voice over the network, and that's something we already have. But having voice over Wi-Fi in certain places, like basements or places where you don't expect to have coverage, then that's absolutely great. And if you put it together with private networks, I can deploy a private network for an event, and then people can call over Wi-Fi. That's great. And if you have legacy phones where you need to put an app to dial, but if you can do it natively, then the experience is absolutely seamless. It's like if you just on a regular circuit switch phone doing phone calls. So I'm saying that voice over Wi-Fi, in my view, has or is going to have a stronger demand than VoLTE, or probably is that now that I go VoLTE, let me go voice over Wi-Fi as well, because it's as I said, a small incremental investment, and I gain a lot of things, new use cases I can do, and probably with more or better possibilities to monetize. So, but let's see.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other questions from the chat? I'm not seeing any other questions from the chat, so I think that's it from the chat. So I was going to ask a question on your perspective on the future of VoLTE and voice over Wi-Fi, but I think you wrapped it up in the last person's question. But where do you see the technology on the whole is going?
Well, I think that the main point here would be that technology runs at a certain pace and market runs in different pace. So we technologies, we love to do technology for the sake of it, and we love launching technologies. So VoLTE is well established as a technology stack. Same for voice over Wi-Fi. We are all working on voice over new radio, which is where it's coming after this. And so whenever we go to 5G standalone voice new radio, which is IMS, running on the new, most efficient 5G network. So we're going in that direction. So I think voice over IMS, voice over IP will be the norm in certain times. And then we are thinking about the next technology evolution. But now the point is that we might run as much as we want with the technology, but everything is being driven by business. Okay, so where is the business? That's the big point. Is that where carriers, you guys are really experts on trying to think about, how can I monetize these technologies? As we said, VoLTE is complicated. So I think and I hope that all these new technologies are being driven from business strategies more than from technologies themselves. Okay, so let's all work together to find ways to monetize this. So people feel that there's a perceived value, that there's a real value behind these technologies that are giving me something I didn't have, and then we can all charge, and then we can all live from it nicely and healthy. So I think it's more on business than in technology. Technology is very well set. 3GPP has all the evolutions that needs to be done on networks. I think again is more on the user experience and on the business part.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for engaging with Javier via your questions. Before we wrap up, I have a few announcements to share. Firstly, in January, the end of January 2024, we will be having our Canto Connect. It should be wise to say that we are entering into our 40th year as the Canto family, promoting growth and development for the ICT sector in the region. So we're going to have our Canto Connect, our conference, a conference, and our AGM at the end of January in Trinidad. The flyer is up. It's an opportunity for you to come and network with all the key stakeholders. So mark those dates on your calendar and reach out to the Secretariat for more information on the event. Secondly, this marks the last Canto conversation for 2023. We will resume in March 2024. I'm appealing to the audience, even you, Javier, if you have a topic that you feel needs to be explored, if you feel that there's a technology you want to learn more about, please reach out to the Secretariat. The Canto Conversation is a wonderful dialogue on what's happening with the technology space, how it impacts the region, how it impacts each stakeholder group in the region, from the operators, from the regulators, the policymakers, and of course, from the consumers. So I wonder, so you can reach out to us. Again, I want to say thank you to Mr. Javier for this engaging and valuable presentation. We appreciate it. And thank you all for being part of Canto Conversation. We look forward to seeing you at Canto Connect in January and when we resume. Stay tuned and stay connected and have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Teresa.